to Pals in Politics, the place to hear from those teaching, learning, and impacted by politics, government, citizenship, and democracy.
Where we talk all things teaching, learning, and living politics with interesting people who are experiencing politics and government in their own way. So whether you're a teacher, whether you're a student, or you're just simply trying to work out how the world works, this is the place for you. And as always, we're really grateful to our speakers who are going to share their thoughts and their perspectives with us in a unedited and raw and honest conversation. So if you like what you see, please do like and subscribe. And if you want to see the extended version of today's conversation, you can do on the PEF's Politics Classroom community. The link, as always, is in the comments. So today we are joined by Zeeshan, who is going to talk to us. Hi, Zeeshan.
Hello.
Thank you so much for taking the time today.
Of course.
So Zeeshan is a final year politics student at the University of Southampton, and he says he has a strong interest in how political ideas, institutions and real world events shape the way that we understand society, and that he's particularly passionate about making politics engaging and accessible for students and teachers alike. So that is absolutely what we try and do here, Zeeshan, so thank you very much. So we are going to start off then with just a little bit about you, Zeeshan, if that's all right. Sort of just give us a bit of a potted history. What's your journey been as you've progressed to this final year at Southampton?
So I started off, obviously, secondary school was the year to experience COVID. I feel like that kind of shaped the educational history for me. Then I sort of quite got interested in politics around the time we were spent at home during COVID. Went to sixth form, did A-level politics, fell in love with the idea of it, and then ended up at uni doing it now. And I'm about to graduate in a few months.
Oh, congratulations. How did you find doing, like, sort of starting your studies or sort of GCSEs and A-levels in COVID? Because I was a teacher at the time, so I was teaching students online. What was it like on the other side of the camera?
See, I think for the first few months, the novelty was like at its peak. It was the best enjoyment ever. I was like, we're off school. But then I think after a while, coming back into education, it definitely took a slip upon like learning habits and trying to understand how to revise, for example. So I think it cemented like the subjects you were interested in prior to COVID. You really found them more engaging, but sort of trying to learn new ideas felt a lot more harder because it was something new that you weren't particularly doing before. But I think around that time, because I'd gone into year 11, so it was sort of like the weird time period of we didn't know if we were sitting GCSEs or not, and then we had like teacher assessed grades. So I think it was such a weird time. In a way, I think it kind of did really set like academic expectations for the future onwards, because students kind of took it as like, if we've been away from education for so long, we can really put our mind to it.
So you didn't do GCSE exams in the traditional sense?
We did teacher assessed grades in 2021, and I think that alone in itself was so different to obviously anything that's been done before. So it kind of felt weird going into A-levels because we had never really done a formal exam, and then when we sat out actual A-levels, I was like, oh, I've never had to do this before.
Yeah, because GCSE is often the practice run for A-level, so you obviously didn't have that opportunity.
Yeah, which I feel like in a way, obviously, looking back at it now, I'm like, I saved myself having to sit through exams, but I think it definitely did kind of really play a toll in the first like year of A-levels, trying to figure out like the idea of actually sitting an exam and how different it is to what people tell you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I remember being, as I say, the other side, trying to work out grades for students. So for those listening who don't know, do you want to talk us through what were teacher assessed grades for those that perhaps are hearing that and don't know what it is?
So for us, it was the case of for each subject, we sat around 5 exams, and then they kind of took our average across the 5 and sort of gave us a grade. But I think it felt a lot more, because you were doing a lot more exams than you traditionally would, in the sense if you sat there, it kind of felt like you were just bombarded with questions, which in a way, it kind of did give you a better outcome, because granted, if you didn't do so well on one, you had the other 4, but I do think it was quite a lot for one student to be doing at one time.
It was, absolutely. It was a lot for us teachers to try and mark and process as well. And of course, there was normally, as teachers, you can kind of go, look, what will be will be. It's not on us. It's on you now. And then suddenly it all became on us.
Yeah.
Oh, I've got some stories I could tell you from the teacher side of that experience. Absolutely. So you did your A levels. You did A level politics.
I did A-level politics, history, and sociology.
Oh, fantastic. Why did you pick those subjects?
In all fairness, honestly, I kind of didn't initially choose them. So I picked English literature, English language, and initially geography. And then I kind of started A-levels and I was like, I don't actually think I'm enjoying this so much. So I kind of, even my teacher will agree to this, like it must have been late into the term. And I was like, do you mind if I switch my A-levels? And he was like, yes and no, but he was like, I kind of want to see if you can catch up. And then lo and behold, I was like, give me a week. And I just came to him and he was like, I can't even deny the facts. You've caught up so fast. But I think with them three, they did really complement each other well. Like I do say, if anyone was to pick that combination, that each A-level complements one another, where when you're learning about one, you can see the resemblance or similarity in another. I definitely think like politics is that one A-level that even you'll see politics in every single thing you study. So I think it's quite easy if you do take it as an A-level, even if you were doing something like history or geography, for example, you could see familiar stuff and it'd be easier to sort of revise and go through.
Yeah, absolutely. Was it Link? I think I've said this before in another episode, but one of my favorite quotes is a Lincoln quote when he said, in the end, when you remove everything else, there is nothing but politics. And I think that's very true for all parts of life, but also A levels. So you did your A levels and then you chose Southampton. Can you talk us through why you chose Southampton?
I feel like, again, this is another thing of me just not being able to have a good decision. I didn't even initially choose Southampton. Like, I applied here, but it was never like the uni that screamed out to me for some reason. If Southampton is watching this, I'm so sorry. It's not the case, but it was sort of never really in my mind to come here. And then I think naturally I sort of went through all my other unis and I kind of felt faults with a lot of them. I was like, I wasn't sure about the location or like the going out scene or stuff like that. And then I sort of thought, okay, I've gone through all my other four. What's wrong with Southampton? And then naturally, there was nothing wrong with this place. I was like, it's actually not bad. Which then I came here for my open day in February. And I was sort of like, okay, like this has exceeded my expectations. And then I sort of was like, what's the worst? Like, I'll get here if I like it, I like it. And then touch wood, now it's been 3 years and I'm going to be leaving the place in a few months and I love it.
Oh, fantastic. So what do you think have been your highlights? Let's do Southampton generally first, then we'll talk about politics. But obviously we've got a lot of people here who will be thinking about where to go for uni. So what were the highlights of Southampton?
I think if you came to Southampton and you're interested in sports, you would love this place. Like sports societies and sports socials here are like, I know every uni has like a Wednesday sports, but I think Southampton does it so well. I think Wednesdays are it actually makes you feel like you're in a community, even though it's going out and like going to socials. I think it's because it's a smaller place than a lot of, like, for example, London, for example. I think people tend to stick together a lot more and you feel like you're really part of like a group because it's not a very big place to get around. I mean, you also attended Southampton, you kind of contest to that as well. Like it's quite close knit, which I kind of prefer.
Yeah, I came though from quite a small little town in rural Oxfordshire, so Southampton felt a bit bigger than that when I went there.
See, this is the Birmingham to Southampton pipeline. Like I feel like for me, I've come from such a big city to here that I really kind of prefer like you'll be able to walk around and you'll recognize people and stuff, and it feels nice to like be able to walk down to the high street and you can like bump into someone, you know. But I think in terms of like good memories here, I definitely think like. Honestly, I think just like kind of getting here, and I didn't know anyone initially before coming to uni. So for me, I took it as like, this is my chance to like shine. Like I don't know anyone here. I've got no one holding me back in anything. Like I'm just gonna go and chat to everyone. And within the first few weeks, I was like, I've got so many new friends. Like this is perfect.
So what advice would you give someone looking back on your 3 years at Southampton? What advice would you give someone who's just about to start?
I think also come with the expectation of it's an open boat for you, meaning you could do whatever you want. You could become literally like just talk to anyone and everyone. I think that's the best piece of advice I'd ever give because everyone's in the same boat as they all want to make friends, but some people are just a little bit scared to make the first move. So you rather be the one to make the initial conversation, and after that, like, it's plain sailing.
I think that's a really good lesson for life in general, actually. Just be the one to start conversations. And I've learned that doing this.
Yeah, like if you're a bit confident in yourself, people will view that as, oh my God, I really want to be friends with you because you've actually approached me and like you've made the first move. So people see that as such a positive thing. So they'll be like, because you were so bold to do that, I've got nothing else to hold back from. Let's just become friends.
Absolutely. I think that's really, really good a way of looking at it. So you've chosen politics.
Yeah.
What have you studied as part of your politics course at Southampton?
So Southampton is a Bachelor of Science in Politics, which slightly differs from other unis, coming into Southampton, I was kind of a bit worried because I was like, oh, I know it's going to be a bit to do with like statistics and maths, for example. But in a way, I'm kind of really glad that it's a Bachelor of Science where it's opened my skills to a lot, like understanding like research and data and analytics. It was something I was never confident in before this because you don't typically do any of that stuff in A-level politics or anything before that. So I think it's really broadened my mind in terms of learning new content because it's something you would never have initially done. And I think with the course, you learn a lot more than just writing essays, for example. Like, you know how to analyze data and do studies and conduct interviews, stuff like this, which I think is quite good.
And what political topics have you looked at? What have been the favourites?
So I decided in second year at Southampton and third year, you can sort of pick your optional modules for the entire year. So I went down the route of like Middle Eastern politics, American politics, sort of gauging a lot more like international stuff because I kind of wanted to broaden my mind. Because I think, again, in A-levels, we only covered American politics, which again is very interesting, but that's only one country in comparison to the rest of the world.
Yeah, I mean, I'm having a bit of a deja vu moment because bear in mind, I did my dissertation in 2007. My dissertation was on the relationship between Israel, the US, and Iran. So I'm watching the news at the moment with a real sense of, oh, I was talking about this 20 years ago. What's your dissertation on?
So my dissertation is on media portrayal of migration and how this will influence public opinion. And like, I think that was another thing I was quite interested in when I got to second and third year, because I'm sort of like, I've never really looked at the media, for example, as like a big source of interest. Like, obviously we use media so much in day to day, but I've never personally sat there and like analyzed media, for example. So I think like actually like stripping it down to like understanding language and how it's used in media and how we view that. I think it's quite interesting for me at the minute doing it because it's something, again, I've never really done before.
And what were your conclusions?
So currently I'm sort of viewing how like language is quite like harming in terms of like how people view immigration and how this makes people view it as something different. And I think I'm doing currently like studies. So I've set a bunch of questionnaires to all my friends and everyone being like, how often do you consume media? Like, what sort of typical language are you seeing? What sort of themes? Like, sort of getting the real explanation as to what journalists are reporting, so how that will make you view the idea of migration.
I think that's really interesting based on what you were just saying, that it seems to be quite a research approach to your dissertation, which is usual for politics dissertations.
As well, I just got back from my semester abroad in Prague, and they focus a lot there on like research more than just writing essays. Like, they want you to sort of be a political researcher yourself and sort of view even like things about like the Czech political history, for example. They want you to really go and like gauge thoughts from other people and sort of understand it rather than just reading books, for example.
Prague is my favorite city in Europe.
You know what? Every single person has told that to me.
I love Prague. I've been about somewhere between 15 and 20 times. Absolutely love it.
I think going there for a semester really like changed my opinion, because obviously I knew Prague is a lovely place beforehand, but being there every single day, and I never ran out of things to do. I was constantly just like, I could do so many things in one day, and I was like, this is such a different experience from like obviously staying in England.
Yeah, absolutely. Anyone ever thinking about somewhere to visit in Europe? I think we'd both say Prague then.
We would.
Fantastic. Okay, so what's next then? So you're coming to the end of your third year. What's next for you?
Well, graduation is in sight. It's literally a matter of a few months now. And then hopefully I'm starting my master's back in Birmingham in September. So that will be a year to kind of focus on education. And then hopefully after that, I'm sort of going down the route of perhaps a PhD or even working abroad somewhere in like diplomacy, for example.
Oh, fantastic. So do you have any thoughts yet about what you want to focus in on your master's?
So my master's, I'm doing it in politics and international relations. And I kind of, again, want to go down the route of like Middle Eastern politics and like South Asian politics, for example. I think that's something obviously personal to me because I'm South Asian that I would want to focus in on. Because I think viewing, until you don't really personally like really do your research on stuff, you can only sort of have a limited scope of understanding different countries' politics, for example.
Yeah, and what would you say are some of the differences that you would signpost us to?
I think more in terms of South Asian politics, that if you were to view Pakistan, for example, with Imran Khan and a lot of it's such a and art sort of politics, and there's a lot more going on, and it's a lot more like there's a lot of like, for example, corruption and a lot of these themes where you sort of really have to read a various amount of like sources of media. You can't just read one because, again, typically it's quite biased in Pakistan, for example. So I think you have to really understand that you can't just take one person's opinion. You have to kind of see that there'll probably be another 10 that you have to kind of bring all together to then corroborate.
Yeah, and do you think that's a direction of travel we're moving towards in this country, or do you think that's quite a simplistic sort of?
I do in some aspects. I think, again, even like from understanding my dissertation, that the media, how it portrays certain stuff, for example, unless you go and you read 10 various forms of media that all report with different opinions, you're going to get a very sort of, if you like to read, for example, The Sun, you would get one opinion. And I think people take that as face front value of, if The Sun said this, it means it should be correct. But you kind of have to think that there's so many other like different newspapers, for example, and different forms of media where they'll report something different, but because it's not screaming in your face, you're not being able to see that sort of view.
Okay, fantastic. And final question before we take a short break. As I said, we've got a lot of people who might be thinking about what to choose at uni. We might have people at GCSE thinking about what to do at A-level. If you cast your mind back over the last few years, what advice would you give to people thinking about A-levels, thinking about university, as someone that's now been through it?
I think with A-levels, generally pick something you're passionate about. Like if you're not gonna, A-levels are a big step up from GCSE, and I think if you're not confident and you're not happy to do the subject, you can't really float through the 2 years. And then I think, obviously, when you pick your A-levels, it's sort of naturally, but I think by the time you'll get to end of year 12, you'll kind of have an idea of what you want to do at uni, because you would have spent a whole year doing these 3 subjects in depth. But I think with uni, sort of go to all the open days, sort of go to, especially like the offer talks and the taster lectures. Like there was a time where up until honestly, like just before submitting my personal statement, that I was sure I wanted to do history at uni. And then I sort of went to a few open lectures and I was like, I don't really think this is something I'd want to do for the next 3 years. And then I sort of went to the politics ones and I kind of weighed up my options of which would be a better suit for me. And then I sort of landed here, I guess.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Here we are. So thank you, Zeeshan. We're going to take a bit of a break there. If you want to hear more, please do pop over to the Politics Classroom. The link, again, is in the comments, and you will be able to hear the extended version of the conversation that's coming up. Thank you very much. We will be back in just a second.